let's kick this off. So, good morning, good afternoon. I guess there's possibly somebody that's over in Europe paying attention to us, so good evening to them. Welcome to our first part of a three-part webinar series that we're putting on, Maximizing Configuration Manager for the Modern World. Part one is on what's new in training in enterprise client management. My name is Wally Mead. I'm a Principal Program Manager with Cireson, and I've been with Cireson for about 3.5 years. Primarily, before that, I was in the Configuration Manager product group at Microsoft for a little over 20 years, 22 years, working primarily with Configuration Manager, and before that, SMS. So I'll be hosting your session today and doing the second half of it. And we have on the line with us also co-presenting as our great partner, Netrix. And so I'll let Jay and Phil introduce themselves, and then we'll get moving.
Thank you, Wally. Good morning, afternoon, evening, depending on where you live. My name is Jay Parekh, one of the partners here at Netrix and the practice director for what we call the Enterprise Computing and Mobility practice.
And hello, everybody. My name is Phil Schwan. I'm a solutions architect with Netrix, working in that Enterprise Computing and Mobility practice as well.
Very good. So all of you, thank you for taking an hour out of your day to spend with us, listening to us babble on about Configuration Manager and how we think he can help you out in your environment. So again, this is part one of a three-part series. We'll have the next two parts over the next couple of weeks. So looking forward to that. And again, thank you for taking some time with us. Just a couple of housekeeping things for you. You guys are all in listen-only mode, so you're not going to be able to verbally ask questions. However, you should have in your GoToWebinar interface, you should have a questions area there. If you do have questions throughout the presentation, please do go ahead and type those into the questions panel, and we will see those and we'll address those. However, we probably will not be addressing the questions till the end of the presentation after we've gone through all the content. So what I request is that when you do type in a question, put a little context around it. Just don't say, why not? Because in an hour, we're not going to know what why not you're referring to. So be a little descriptive in your question as you ask it, but please do be interactive. That certainly does help us out. The session is being recorded, so I've already started the recording. So I'll record all the way through the questions time. So if you have to leave early and miss the questions panel section, we will have that recorded, and we will post this video recording up on our Vimeo site. So you can go to Vimeo, vimeo.com/Team Cireson, all one word, and there this video will be posted. Probably not today, but I'm guessing certainly by the end of the day tomorrow it'll be up there. And we have well over 100 videos up there from different webinars and stuff we've done. And if Jay wants a copy of the video to put on his own site, we can certainly make that happen too as well. But that is available for you guys. So, all right, with that, what's new in Configuration Manager? I'm going to hand it off to Jay and Phil to go ahead and introduce Netrix to you guys and to talk about what's new in the latest release of Configuration Manager. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and make Phil the presenter. Oops, or have you already? Oh, there you go. Phil, you should have the floor now. Oh, but as soon as I click yes to say yes, I want to change that. And oh, there you go. Got your screen now. So you're all good to go there, Phil and Jay.
Excellent. Perfect. Thank you so much. So in the next about 15, 20 minutes or so, give or take, we're going to kind of talk about what's new in Configuration Manager 1706. As everybody is aware, or hopefully aware, that about a little bit over 2 years ago, Microsoft introduced Configuration Manager in a whole new different style, just kind of aligning with the Windows 10 as a service. So if Windows 10 needs to change at least now twice a year, Config Manager also needs to change to keep up with those changes. So Microsoft introduced Configuration Manager as a service, so known as the current branch model. And at least 4 times a year, you're going to see updates to Configuration Manager. The latest update being 1706, and that's what we're going to walk through today. As I mentioned, Jay Parekh with the Enterprise Computing and Mobility practice here at Netrix. So just Netrix, about 375 employees worldwide, but we do a lot of things, and we're not going to go through all of that things today, but kind of what it relates to the session we're doing today. is around the end user compute side of things, right? So we have a team of folks that works on Windows 10 projects, which has been delayed us in the last couple of years. Configuration Manager, Microsoft Deployment Toolkits, PowerShell, all things run the end user compute, automation, user experience, everything from operating system migrations to design to security implementations to troubleshooting for slow logons and so forth. Next. So kind of walk through, at a high level, changes to 1706. So there is quite a bit of changes that come about every time there's a new branch, right? So the 17 is 2017 and 06 is obviously June, and that's how Microsoft kind of sends out the build numbers or the branch numbers. Same thing with Windows 10 as well. There's a lot of things in 1706 has changed, but we're going to highlight the key ones because within 1 hour, it's almost impossible to try to get everything done. But the most important ones are the ones we're going to walk through, and then I'm going to hand this off to Phil Schwan, who's going to actually walk through the console into some of these settings and where they're located and how to configure those as well. So at the top, client pure cache support for express installation files for Windows 10 and Office 365, right? So pure cache has been installed or introduced by Microsoft in SCCM. Last couple of branches was in preview, and now to be able to use that for express installations for the Windows 10 and Office 365 deployments is a big thing, right? So what express installation is, if you're not familiar with it, is that allows you to basically push out the difference in the monthly cumulative update. So in September, if you downloaded the full September cumulative update, now in November, as long as you're up to speed month to month, November you only could get the express installation, which is basically the difference from the last month installation. So this way you don't have to do the cumulative updates over and over again, 100 gigs, or I'm sorry, 100 megs, 200 megs, 300 megs every single month. Now you do the express installation. So SCCM now has full support for express installation, right? And this is only for Windows 10 and Office 365 for this portion itself. Azure Active Directory integration with Configuration Manager. So in the past branches, OMS connectors and so forth have been available, but sometimes a little bit cumbersome to kind of configure. What Microsoft now introduced with 1706 is more of a wizard-driven configuration that allows you to configure OMS, Windows Store for Business, cloud management, so the cloud management gateways and so forth, as well as the upgrade readiness, which allows you to do take data from your Windows client machines from Windows 7, Windows 8, and Windows 10, upload it to Microsoft's upgrade readiness portal within the Operation Management Suite, OMS, and then allows you to analyze that data. Is this application going to be compatible? Is there known issues and so forth? So it helps you with app rationalization and so forth. And Intune integration, right? So Microsoft's mobile device management platform, Intune, which is a cloud-based platform that's been around for the last few years, but really taken off in the last year and a half or so. Initially really focused on endpoint devices such as mobile devices, iOS and Androids. But with the introduction of Windows 10 and MDM built-in APIs, that now you could fully manage a Windows 10 machine. So in the cases of not on your domain, traveling users that you need to manage and maintain at least the patches and pushing applications out, Intune fully allows you to do it. Now you could actually integrate Intune into SCCM to have a single pane of glass. And then as Intune is a cloud-based platform and it's updated on a monthly basis, that's another reason why SCCM is updated more frequently, not just for Windows 10, but also to allow for the Intune updates to be available into SCCM. So some of the new configuration items for our baseline that's available is, for device encryption, language configuration, power and sleep settings, Microsoft Edge settings like homepage and so much more. So now that's fully baked into 1706 as well. And there's a lot more MDM features in 1706, which we will not go through on this webinar, but in the future webinars, so we'll kind of dig deeper into some of those as well. Hey, Phil. Okay, sorry. And then application management, right? So one of the new features, it's a very welcome feature in Config Manager, is to be able to execute PowerShell scripts right from the Config Manager console to a collection full of devices, right? So in the past, if you want to do a PowerShell script, you would go ahead and create an application or package and go through that entire process. Now there's an actual script node that I could actually import a PowerShell script or write something within the window itself, and then apply that towards a collection. So if I want to restart a bunch of machines, which now you could do natively as well, but if I want to do a PowerShell script that creates a bunch of folders on all my endpoints and creates text files or whatever it is, something that you it's a requirement from your business. Now I could actually create a PowerShell script directly or import one that exists and then apply that to a set of containers. So Phil's going to walk through what that looks like, what that means, and how to get that applied to your collections. And changes in the operating system deployment, OSD, right? With Windows 10, secure boot is more and more important, especially with UEFI, and you cannot really take advantage of a lot of the security features that's in Windows 10 Enterprise, especially without secure boot enabled. So to be able to collect information about what devices you have out there that have secure boot and what doesn't have secure boot, now by default in 1706, you're able to collect that inventory information, and you can report against that and then make some business decisions on what you want to do with those that are not secure boot enabled and go and get those enabled. So now you can actually have a full report. And then as a 1706, that is enabled by default. That's in the SMS firmware class within WMI that allows that information to be gathered by Configuration Manager. Collapsible task sequence groups are now available as well. So when you create a task group, just being able to collapse and expand those groups back and forth. It's probably a small thing for a lot of people, but for those that live and breathe in task sequences all day long, those little things like that makes our jobs much easier, right? And then, updating boot images with the latest PE from the latest ADK that's been installed, right? So right now, when you right-click on a boot image, you go ahead and update that boot image and updates all the distribution points. But now you have the capability of saying to not only update the boot image because of all the changes I made in drivers or whatever I made change, but get the latest information or the source for the PE that's available within the latest ADK, and then update the PE version at the same time you're updating my boot image, right? So I don't have to go kind of doing all that in different ways like I did that in the past. Software update, we kind of talked about express updates earlier, right? So we kind of understand what express updates are. But one of the problems with express updates is that, it's still fairly new, and downloading the express updates from the Microsoft Content Distribution Network, their data centers was always sometimes a lengthy problem. So one of the improvements in 1706 now is the download time to get the software express updates, not only to your servers, but then also to your endpoints as well. And then Microsoft Surface driver management availability that's within the software update point. So when you go and configure software update point, now there's an additional checkbox that Phil will show you where that is to enable to be able to manage the Surface drivers as well. So Surface has been in almost every customer that I've been to and Phil's been to, and so either they have few or they have hundreds of them, right? Surface laptops, Surface books, Surface Pros in the past. So to be able to have that management capability directly in the Configuration Manager was important to a lot of our customers or a lot of Microsoft customers. And upgrade readiness reporting in the monitoring node of Configuration Manager is now available. Upgrade readiness, as I explained, is basically if you understand what ACT used to be, the Application Compatibility Toolkit. Think about that now in the Microsoft Cloud under the Operation Management Suite, but with a lot more power and a lot more information, a lot more data that's available to you to understand what's out there, what applications are out there, what drivers, what Office add-ons, things like that, and then help you make some business decisions on how you want to move forward with your Windows 10 project. And that upgrade readiness, by the way, it's not only for Windows 7, 8 to Windows 10. That's not the only reason you would have that data, but once you are fully Windows 10 deployed for every single user, every single endpoint, you can still continue to use the upgrade readiness to help you kind of set those baselines from branch to branch. So let me know if there's any issues from 1703 to 1709, 1709 to 1803, and so forth. So I could continue to have upgrade readiness enabled in my environment. And as of today, it's still free available. So you create a free data plan in the operation management suite, enable upgrade readiness to be able to intelligently kind of analyze your environment to make sure your upgrades are successful as possible. And as I mentioned, mobile device management, right? The built-in capabilities that are part of Intune into SCCM, along with not just around compliance, but also mobile access, mobile application management, and so forth. There's a lot more improvements, and Netrix will have a webinar in the next couple of months to kind of walk you through Intune standalone and Intune integrated, and what that means and what the changes are and what you can and what you cannot do. And so we will follow up with part of our follow-up these calls is make sure you have links to those webinars as well. With that, I'm going to give that to the mic and the screen to Phil Schwan, and Phil's going to walk through the Configuration Manager console and kind of highlight some of the changes that I spoke about. Phil?
All right. Thanks, Jay. All right, so let's dive into the Config Manager console real quick and take a look at where some of these things are configured and where we can utilize them. So one in particular that's a real highlight is the ability to run the PowerShell scripts from within the console. So if we go under our software library, we can see now that feature is enabled, we can see a new node here called scripts. So we can go in and we can actually create or import scripts here that we want to run on the client machines. Now, by default, for security purposes, if we go in and create a script in here, we're not able to actually approve our own script. So just creating a script in here doesn't automatically make it available to run. It actually has to be approved in order to be deployed to machines. And by default, you cannot approve your own script. Somebody else has to go and approve them for you. So it's kind of a built-in, second set of eyes feature to ensure, a little bit of stability, because we all know with Config Manager you can make broad changes very quickly. So we want to make sure that it's, a change that we want to make in a script that we want to run. In this case, we've gone ahead and disabled that so that we can approve our own scripts. But you can see we have a couple of scripts that are already in here that have been approved to run against machines, and in this case I'm just going to go ahead and create a new one just so we see what that process looks like. So we'll just say we're going to create a test file on all of our systems, and currently only PowerShell is available for this. It's not known yet whether this will be expanded, but PowerShell tends to be the management tool of choice for these types of changes, so right now we're sticking with PowerShell. So suppose I already have a script that I want to use. I can go ahead and I can click open and just pull that script directly in. Otherwise, I can simply type in a command that I want to use. So we can say new item, C Windows temp, test.txt. So I can say that's the script I want to run. We'll go ahead and click next, and we've created our script in there. And at this point, it's still waiting for approval. So typically you would have to have somebody else go ahead and approve that for execution. But in this case, we've set it so that we can approve our own. So I'm going to go ahead and approve my script. So now that script is approved, now I have other scripts in there that I want to be able to use. I can go in and find a collection of machines that I want to run it against. So we'll say we run it against all Windows 10 computers. And if we look up here in the ribbon bar, we can see that I have this option now to run script. So we'll go ahead and click that, and we can select whichever script we want to run and go ahead and initiate that. So what's happening on the back end is it's actually sending a notification to these systems that there is a script available to run, and it will run it approximately within the next hour by default. It is randomized so that you don't hit 10,000 machines all at once with the same script, but it does run fairly rapidly. A key to note about this as well is that there's no content being managed on this. So this isn't a situation where you have to go and create a package, deploy it to distribution points, and so forth. The content is managed directly by Config Manager itself and not through the normal content distribution mechanisms. Another key caveat to remember here is that these This is designed to execute self-contained scripts, so you don't have a command line option that you can provide to say, okay, run this script and then, you know, specify these certain command lines for these certain collections. So if that's something you want to see, that's what user voice is for. That would be a great addition. But currently, the scripts are designed to be self-contained and simply run as the script and nothing more. So let's move on to some things around OS deployment since we're in the software library here. And let's take a look at one of my favorites, which is the collapsible task sequences. So as Jay mentioned, task sequences, OSD task sequences is an area where I lived and breathed for a long time as a full-time config manager admin doing OS deployments. And one of the things about using MDT integration in particular is you get this out-of-the-box task sequence that is very, very, very long. And it would be nice if we could kind of collapse this down if we're only working in certain areas. So now with this update, you can see there are actual collapsible areas within the task sequence. So we can start to collapse this down into segments. And of course, this also helps to not only visualize the logic behind the task sequence, but also helps promote a little more logical organization of your task sequence as you're working through it. So it's a feature that's actually been available in MDT for quite a while. Now it's here in Config Manager to keep that consistent experience across both of them. And so many like myself are cheering this because it's a great addition, great feature. As we look at the boot images, Jay mentioned the ability to update boot images with the latest version of Windows PE from the installed ADK. So as a new ADK comes out, you want to uninstall and uninstall the previous version, install the new version of the ADK on your server. And then we can go ahead and as we update the distribution points for our boot images, we can go ahead and select this new option here to recreate that boot image with the latest version of Windows PE rather than preserving the existing version. So it's a nice, convenient option to be able to automatically update the boot images with the latest ADK version or Windows PE version from the ADK. So go ahead and cancel out of there. So Jay also talked about support for Windows Analytics. So let's switch over and take a quick look at some of our options around that. So as Jay mentioned, Windows Analytics is a great opportunity to be able to upload some data to Microsoft's public cloud and then leverage the analytics services through OMS to be able to determine things like potential app compatibility issues, upgrade driver issues, et cetera. Typically, that's something that is controlled via group policy. But in this case, we have the ability to also control this through client settings policies in Config Manager. So if we're already managing so many things with our clients through Config Manager, why not make that another option that we can use? So if we look, we have now this, we have this new option in the client settings policy for Windows Analytics. And if we go into there, we can see that we can now manage the telemetry settings for Windows 10 from within client settings policies. So of course, because client settings policies are deployed to collections, we can differentiate between different groups of systems much more easily in collections and Config Manager than sometimes we can using WMI filtering and so forth within group policy. So we already have our systems broken out in logical manners that we are used to using. We can continue to leverage client settings policies in the same manner. So if we have our commercial ID for our Windows Analytics, we can go ahead and put that in here, and then we can control the telemetry level for the data that we want sent up via this policy. So we may have certain systems that we want to just send up the basic information versus the enhanced or the full information. That all can now be controlled through the client settings policies. So while we're in the client settings policy, we can also to pop back in here. We can also enable the Express Updates option so that we can begin to use the Express Updates files for the cumulative updates and moving between cumulative updates as Jay mentioned. So we can go ahead and enable that option here and then allow, allow that ability to use those Express installation files. So enabling on the client is one piece of it. However, we do also need to enable that on the site itself. So if I go to the settings for the software update point, one of the first options I'll be presented with is the ability to be able to download those update files. So if I look now, I can see that we're also not only going to download the full approved update files, but also the express installation files for Windows 10 and Office 365. So those two in conjunction will then allow us to leverage those. And then with the implementation of Pure Cache, we can also leverage Pure Cache to make the delivery of those update files even more seamless. And while we're here, we can also look and go ahead and enable our Surface driver and firmware updates directly from the software update point configuration. So by enabling this and then synchronizing, we can now begin to pull in the Microsoft Surface drivers. One important thing to note as a prerequisite to this is that the software update points all have to be running on Server 2016 and not a prior version in order for this to work. Let's check on a couple other things here. So how about Device Guard? So another thing we can do is actually implement Device Guard policies for our systems running Windows 10. So we can now more easily manage either through enforcement or just simply auditing, allowing certain applications to be able to run as trusted applications. So we'll just pick a random executable here like Notepad, and we can configure that in as part of our policy and allow that as a trusted software in addition to our established Device Guard policy. And again, as with any other policy, we can deploy it via collection, so we can differentiate that between different sets of systems. Let's see a couple more options we have. Windows Update for Business policies. So if we go to our software library under Windows 10 servicing, we now also have an option to configure Windows Update for Business policy. So we may have situations where we're not directly managing systems and the updates in particular, the feature updates for Windows 10 with our software update point. We may simply leverage the Windows Update for Business policies to handle that. So our clients are pointing to Microsoft for as far as scanning for those available updates and letting Microsoft's release cadence determine the primary release cycle for it versus a more in-depth control with our software update point. So if I create a new policy here, you can see they do still have the current branch versus current branch for business distinction in here, which is gradually going to fade away in favor of the more consolidated, semi-annual channel type of release. But much as with the group policy options for Windows Update for Business, we can set deferral periods for these systems. So I can say 14 days after that update release. And then if there are issues that we encounter or reasons that we need to pause that release schedule, we have the options in here for being able to pause them for a certain amount of time. We can also include, beyond the feature updates, we can include other Microsoft product updates, as well as drivers that might be released through Windows updates. So, and with that, I think that covers most of the highlights. I'll jump real quick just to show, don't have really time to walk through, but just to show in the Azure services here, where you have the wizard now to be able to configure your services. So if you need to add a connection like we already have here to OMS or to Cloud Management, Windows Store for Business, you have a convenient wizard here to enable you to be able to do that. Once you add the appropriate applications from within this wizard, you're then prompted to log in and authenticate to that Azure tenant, at which point it creates the connection and allows the interface between Config Manager and that Azure service. And with that, I think that's all the highlights at this point. So at this point, I'll go ahead and turn it back over to Wally.
That was fantastic, gentlemen. Very, very nice to see. And you guys all should, I guess I could start changing presenter back to me so I can get my slides going and share my screen. And let's see here. Are we back up in business? You guys got my screen now?
Yep.
Okay, very good. Thanks. So well done, Jay and Phil. There's a lot of cool stuff well, as Jay mentioned, in each new release of Configuration Manager, it comes out, and it's hard to get through everything in there. A couple of things to note. Phil didn't mention it, but on that run scripts feature, it is a feature you do have to turn on. I believe it's still a pre-release feature, in fact. So you do have to turn that on in your environment. So just be aware of the fact that when you do install a new build, even though you might hear about a feature or you might have seen a demo of a feature, if you don't see it in your console, always go to the updates and servicing area and then go to the features, expand it out and go to features and look at the list of features, and you might see that feature has been not turned on yet. So it might say that it's turned off, and you just have to go in there, turn it on. Then if you turn it on, you have to close the console, start the console back up before you be able to take advantage of that feature. So, but it is cool to see how quickly the product group is adapting to new functionality, and especially a lot of the stuff that Jay was talking about and Phil was showing, the ability of creating a lot of the different Azure components, being able to configure them in one wizard, or the cloud management gateway, things that are setting you up for, as Jay mentioned, some of the future presentations we'll have on managing Windows 10 devices after deployment, and some of those things are looking at the mobile device management area. So it's very cool. It's actually hard to keep up to date with it, but that's why we like to do these presentations, so we can try and give you guys a little more knowledge in the areas and kind of pique your interest in it, because not everybody can stay up to date. So. All right, so now what I want to do for the rest of the time we have until we get to the Q&A portion is talk about how you can extend your reach of Configuration Manager within your IT departments. So a lot of people have seen the power and the benefits of Configuration Manager over the years. But as Phil mentioned, like the script feature, you want to have somebody else approve it, because Configuration Manager touches everything, and it can cause a lot of problems if you don't know what you're doing. If you make a mistake, you can hit a lot of things that you probably didn't want to hit. So there's a lot of capabilities in there where you do have to go in and turn something on, or provide some capabilities, but you are unsure how to secure that so people don't have more rights and access than they really need to have. So that's one of the things that Cireson we've come out with, called the Cireson Portal for Configuration Manager, that I want to walk you through. So just real quickly here, a couple of slides on Cireson. We're a software and services company. For the services side of the house, we like to partner with our partners such as Netrix to go ahead and have them do the services work, and obviously the selling of our software as well. But we started about 6 years ago doing services for Service Manager, and found a lot of usability gaps. So we started creating some apps to fill those gaps, and found those were really popular. So we're more on the software side of the house now. So that's where the service management areas come in. We have a stream of applications to help you with Service Manager from the end user perspective as well as the analyst perspective. You guys are all Configuration Manager people, so you know the wealth of data that's in Configuration Manager, but it's kind of hard to manage that as far as true asset management. So we created an asset management product to take the ConfigMan data, dump it into a CMDB from Service Manager, and allow you to extend that with financial, contractual, warranty, location codes, tying your software and your hardware assets together with primary users and costs related to those, and so on. And then over the past few years, we've been working more in the Configuration Manager space. We have 4 free apps, which you've probably heard me talk about before, that you can just go to Cireson.com and download those just to help you out. Some integrate with ConfigMan, some are standalone utilities. And now what we'll talk about here is the brand new app that we come out with called the Cireson Portal for Configuration Manager. Just real quickly, we got, I think it's now 65 countries where our 1,200 customers reside. Lots of consulting hours over the many years we've had, and what we're really proud of is a 99% renewal rate. So we find that our customers that are buy into the Cireson solutions, they wind up renewing year over year because they do see the value. And those that don't are primarily ones that give up on Service Manager and go to some other platform there. And just, I won't go through this at all, but just a few of our fans being customers, whether it's in IT or banking or government or manufacturing, sports, whatever. We got people all over the world that utilize our products. And just lastly, where we sit in the stack, almost all of our products, 99% of them, sit on top of System Center, such as the one we're going to talk about today. And then obviously System Center can either be in cloud focus, especially with the current branch product, or it can be run locally in Hyper-V or in your physical platforms. Okay, so you guys all know Configuration Manager, and as I mentioned, it's got a lot of power. There's a lot of reach it can have. However, it can also be very dangerous if you don't know what you're doing and you haven't secured it properly. So what we tried to do is come with a product to make your work life easier. So you guys are all familiar with the Configuration Manager console. For a lot of years when I was at Microsoft in their product group, one of the most common requests was, we want a web-based console. And the product group just never got around to creating a web-based console. So that's what we've done. We made a web experience for you to access specific portions and features from Configuration Manager that we'll talk about. We hopefully think it's a much more intuitive and easier to navigate portal than the native Configuration Manager console is. And hopefully you'll see that in the demos. As I mentioned, Configuration Manager has a ton of data in it, and sometimes it's kind of hard to filter through all that data to find what you want. Think about a help desk person, and they get a call from an end user, and they need to look at their hardware inventory. Well, so they start Resource Explorer. You guys all know how difficult it is to navigate Resource Explorer. So what we've done is we've taken the couple dozen key attributes that we think a help desk person would need to help troubleshoot an end user and put that into a simplified inventory summary view. So trying to take the data that ConfigMan has, which is fantastic, but make it more visible and usable for the IT staff with configurable security. So you get to control which pieces, which components, which objects your IT staff has access to in Configuration Manager through our portal. Not only do we want to expose that data, but we want to make those tasks easier for you to use. Whether it's easier just to look up inventory data, yeah, that's cool to do. But also being able to make it easier for you to create and deploy packages, applications, task sequences, so operating system, integrate with MDT. And one of the cool things we do is when we help you create those objects, whether it's creating the software or deploying the software, we have templates. And you guys are all familiar with creating and deploying software in Configuration Manager and how tedious it is to walk through that wizard to create or deploy the software. You're doing the same thing every single time, but sometimes you're not paying attention because it's repetitive and you miss a setting, a thing that you have to really configure in your environment for it to work. Well, what we allow you to do is have templates where you walk through the wizard one time, save off all those settings, and now as you're creating a new piece of software or deploying a piece of software you've created, just load the template. And the template has all those values preset for you for your deployment settings or your software creation, your distribution points, and so on. And you'll see that again coming up. I'll not really touch on this in this session. We'll cover this next week when we're talking about Windows 10 deployment and management. But when you're deploying operating systems through Configuration Manager, if you're doing a Pixie scenario, you know that Pixie is not a great interface for your people to go through and try and pick the task sequence and walk through it. So a lot of people have to create very complex task sequences to prompt the user for some information, or they work with OSD front ends. We have an OSD front end as well we call Commence. So it's a intuitive interface to allow a IT staff or end user, if you allow it, to walk through the provisioning process, picking a template, picking a task sequence, picking MDT roles, picking their OU, verifying things and clicking OK. Then we kick off the create the computer and config manager, put it in the appropriate collection, and it kicks off the real task sequence for the operating system you just selected. And you'll see that in next week's presentation. In the area of reporting and dashboarding. So you do a lot of work in Config Manager and you want to see what's going on. And the product group has been doing fantastic work in the last few builds of adding new dashboards, whether it's software updates or upgrade analytics or Windows 10 readiness or all those different dashboards you have, Office 365 management. So they're doing great with that. We've created a dashboard as well that you'll see in just a second when I get into the demo that will give you high value information right off the get-go in the dashboard so you know what work you need to work on that day. In terms of reporting, you guys know there's close to 500 reports, 470 some now reports in Configuration Manager. And if you have access to all those, it takes a long time to weed your way through all the different report categories and all the different reports in those categories to find the one you're really interested in. So we don't show you all those reports. You pick and choose which reports are valuable to you. You link them into the CMP, assign which IT groups you want to have access to that report. Then when they go to the report node, those are the only reports they see. They don't see the entire list of all the reports. So we hopefully think that makes it a whole lot easier for you. Now, some of the teams that can take advantage of the Cireson portal for Configuration Manager, we really target those middle three personas, the service desk analyst, the desktop server support team, as well as IT management. You, if you're the ConfigMan admin, you love the ConfigMan console, you live in it all day long. You're not going to abandon the ConfigMan console to go to the CMP. It's not a one-to-one replacement. We don't have all the features there. What we provide is the ability of looking up inventory data for computers, creating and deploying software for your teams, and then doing reporting of what your status is. So that's really what focuses on those middle three personas. The service desk analyst wants to look up data for Configuration Manager to support an end user. So you want to have access to inventory data. Maybe you want to do a remote control session to get out to the log files or something. Maybe you want to go ahead and deploy software if you give them that access. Desktop server support guys, maybe you allow them to do the OS deployments. Maybe you allow them to create the packages and applications and task sequences and so on. IT management, you don't want to give them access to the console at all because it's dangerous. So all they want to do is report. So give them a CMP version and a login to it that is restricted down to just a reports node and give them those half dozen reports that they really need. Now, end user is going to be happier because they get their problems resolved faster because IT and service desk can go ahead and resolve their problems a little more quickly. So with all that said, let's go ahead and jump over and show you what it looks like in practice. So first thing I'll do is just very quickly just give you a high-level overview of what the full interface looks like as an administrator, which I'm logged on as. In the upper right-hand corner, you can see it shows you who you're logged on as. I'm logged on as the administrator. And this is obviously the web browser. I'm logged in as IE because this is an older Windows Server image. I've also got Chrome loaded and it runs in Edge as well. But this is our dashboard. So the dashboard, it shows you right off the top, it shows you the number of computers, the number of users, your client health rate, your client activity rate. This is all coming directly from Configuration Manager. That's going to make it a whole lot easier for you if management says, hey, what percentage of our clients can we hit today with this brand new out-of-band update that Microsoft just released? Well, you know that you got 83% of your clients are active right now, or in the last few minutes anyway. And then you have some status information, clients by CMP status. You have your clients by operating system, and you see as I hover over these, tooltips pop up to show you what the numbers are and what the operating system is. Down here in the lower left is very cool, my deployment status information. You guys all know Configuration Manager and the deployments nodes. You go to the monitoring workspace, you go to deployments node, and there you get this list of all your deployments. And it gives you some statistics like % compliant. Well, to see what you're at, you have to click a deployment, and then you have to click on the view status button, then it shows you all your status. Here, right now, when I load the CMP and go to the dashboard, I can see that I've got an error condition right now. I got one of my deployments in error mode, so I want to go drill further. This guy did say success. I don't care about him, and I got some unknowns, and I'll show you a little bit more about that momentarily. And then computers with missing software updates by severity. Okay, so navigating off the far left-hand side is what we call our navigation pane. So this is the area of things that you can manage or control within the Configuration Manager portal. And we were just looking at the dashboard. Obviously, that's our default for the admins. But if I want to go ahead and manage computers, I can go ahead and click on the computers node. And notice here that in my environment, I have some servers and I have some workstations. That'll be important for my demo as a service desk guy or desktop support guy. I can go ahead and manage my users. And notice, again, I have some service accounts and administrator accounts as well as some end users. I can go ahead and look at software and manage it. I have some Microsoft software, I have some Cireson software, and I have some software that's not Microsoft. I have a few task sequences, so I can go ahead and manage my task sequences. And I'll show you some of the management stuff you can do as I go through the next demos. Here's that drill in of that deployments node that we saw on the dashboard. So let me go ahead and show you all my deployments. And again, think about the monitoring workspace and configuration manager console, and you go to deployments. Here we show you a color-coded color on it so you know what the status is. So here's my error status. This is the one I need to go look at because I know it's an error condition. So I can drill on the error or the software it's being deployed or the collection of computers or users deployed to or the individual resources that are in a specific state of error or success or unknown or whatever it is. So very, very cool and easy to get to. If you integrate with MDT, you can go ahead and add your software to your MDT role so you can use those with your operating system deployment. And then reporting. Very, very easy. Here again, you don't see the 470 some reports that Config Manager has. You just see the reports that you find value in for your organization. And now to make something available, if I want to have this report available, I just right click and say permissions, and I designate the rights to whatever group that I want to allow to access that report. Okay, then on the lower left-hand corner is a new button. New is where you can create new computers, so pre-provisioning them for operating system deployment. I can deploy software. I can go ahead and create software, applications and packages. I can go ahead and create task sequences, software-based task sequences, or operating system deployment task sequences. And again, if I'm integrating with MDT, I can create new MDT roles here. And you'll see some of those as we go through the next couple of weeks. And in the upper right, if you have ability to, depending on the role-based administration controls, is where you can go ahead and set some of these settings. I can create those views of which computers I can see or which software I see or which users I have access to. I can create those templates for creation and deployment of my software. For what I want to look at real quickly here is just security settings. So I'm going to go ahead and walk you through a scenario where a desktop support person gets a call and how they're going to support that end user. So all I've done is I've gone in and created my security groups. And here's my desktop support group. It just points to a group in Active Directory. So here's my domain and my desktop support group in AD. So to configure security, all I had to do is create the group, go to security rights. I go ahead and load that group, desktop support. And now I just designate what navigation menu items does this person have? Which new menu items, which settings does this person have access to? So I'm going to give my desktop support person access to computers, users, software, MDT roles, task sequences, and reports, but not the deployment status and not the dashboard. In new, I'm going to allow them to create new computers, deploy software, or create software deployments and task sequences, but they're not going to be allowed to create packages or applications, and nothing in settings. And notice when I do allow them to deploy software, I can control which resources and their functionality. So by default, they're not going to be able to deploy any software to the built-in collections. So all systems is out. All desktop and server clients is out. Now, if I want to allow that, I can obviously select the checkbox. By default, he's not allowed to deploy software to 80 groups. You may very well want that. My desktop support person, I probably do not want them deploying to servers, so I'll keep that one unchecked. But my server support team, I'll make sure I select that checkbox. Now, you guys all know in Config Manager, when you deploy software, you pick a piece of software, then you walk through the deployment wizard. So it's a one-to-one relationship, one piece of software, one wizard. We allow you actually to batch multiple pieces of software in a single deployment process, creating multiple deployments in the end result. Now, in this case, I'm saying my desktop support person can only deploy one piece of software at a time. And when they deploy software, they can only add one resource to a collection at a time. But you can go ahead and expand those as you want necessary. Okay, so with that said, let me go ahead and now load Chrome. So here I've got Chrome loaded. And if I go to the upper right-hand corner, you'll see I'm logged in as user 2. So I'm no longer the admin, I'm user 2, and user 2 is a member of my desktop support team. So right off the top, you see he doesn't have all those same navigation menu items. There's no dashboard, there's no deployments, there's no events. So he doesn't have access to everything. In new, he can't create new software, can't create new MDT roles. And as you already saw in the upper right-hand corner, there's no settings menu here, so we can't drop down to change anything as far as settings. So the scenario is Wally calls and says, "Hey Jay, I saw Phil using this piece of software called Zoom It, and it looked really cool. I want it, and I can't find it on my computer. So I asked Wally, hey, Wally, okay, let's check. What's your computer name? And Wally has no idea. He's a normal end user, so he doesn't know what computer he's on. Okay, are you on your normal computer? And I say, yeah, I'm on my normal computer. So I just go to, and notice I only have access to servers here. Don't see any of my servers, just the workstations. So I go up here and I start browsing on Wally. So let's go ahead and click on Wally. And it immediately says, okay, there's client 7. So client 7 is my normal computer. So I click on client 7 and I see some basic attributes here. It's Windows 7 Enterprise, that's fine. It is a client and configuration manager and it's listed as a healthy client. Scroll down to bottom and yeah, I see some more information, all good. So let's look and see, is that software already on your computer? You just don't know where to find it. That's possible. So I go to add remove programs. Let me pull this up a little bit for you. And I just scroll through my software and you're correct, Zoom It's not installed. Well, is it deployed? You just don't know how to see a deployment. So let me click on deployments. And nope, you're not in any collection that Zoom It would be deployed to. So you're good to go. Okay, let's verify your computer has the rights to get to be able to install the software. So I'll right click and here's some of the computer actions I have available. Now notice that not all these are available. I can do inventory summary, I can deploy software, I can manage user device affinity, and I can do external tools. I don't have the ability of clearing or cloning or clearing Pixie or deleting or editing or reinstalling the OS. That's based off of the role-based administration settings that I kind of showed you earlier. So I want to go ahead and let's look at inventory summary. So this is what you want to think of here is Resource Explorer. So think about how your help desk team has to navigate Resource Explorer today. So right now we're looking to see, okay, computer name, your last hardware inventory. Oh, that was just a couple hours ago. So you should be good on hardware inventory. You're a healthy client. Here's your primary users, your IP address. Let's look at your hardware. You got a CPU's good. You got enough disk space. You got enough memory. Your operating system's all good. Okay, your hardware is going to support that. Software. Here's all the software that's installed. Yep, verified that. Here's the packages and the software that's deployed available to you. Here's your services that are running, because maybe I know of a conflict between a service and a piece of software, and there's no issues there. Network adapter stuff, that all looks good. My client tab, it's again a healthy client. I'm a 1706 client. Here's all the collections I'm a member of, and here's my software updates available and software updates applied. So yeah, I got to do some deploying of updates or get my updates applied, but we're all good. So the software is not there. The software is not deployed. The computer supports it. And again, think of this hardware summary here. Think about Resource Explorer. It's a whole lot easier to find what you're looking for. Okay, well, let's just say that the inventory was out of date. So maybe I now want to go ahead and check on the computer and force a hardware inventory result. So I can go down to external tools and let me see if your computer is up and running right now. So yep, ping's coming back, so the computer is up and running. We're good to go. Now I can go ahead and launch off to one of those free tools I talked about earlier, Remote Manage. And that will let me connect directly to the client. In here you see some actions like initiate hardware inventory. So I could force a hardware inventory event to happen right now. Or maybe I need to troubleshoot and get to your client log files. I can do that. Maybe I need to go in here and stop a process or a service. Or maybe I want to go in here and kick off a config manager remote control session. I can go ahead and launch those off. You can also extend this out to other web-based apps, like maybe your own ticketing solution, and have it create tickets for you or resolve tickets, whatever. So we're all good. Let's go ahead and deploy the software. So Wally needs that Zoom It software, so let's go ahead and deploy software. There's two different types of software distribution. I'll show you the advanced one, as we call it, called standard software deployment, and then I'll show you how you're probably really going to do it in the real world. So that piece of software was Zoom It. So let me go ahead and filter on it. Yep, there's Zoom It. Let me go ahead and select that piece of software. And notice here it tells me that I've got one software selected and max of one. Remember in my security configuration, I said this user can only add or deploy one piece of software at a time. By default, that's unlimited, so I could multi-select multiple pieces of software. So I got my piece of software. Now, collections. Notice you don't have all systems, you don't have all desktop and server clients and so on, because those were filtered out by security. So maybe I don't know what collection I want. If I do know, I can go ahead and pick that collection and deploy. But if I don't know, there's this option up here called automatically create collection on demand. That will have us create a collection for that piece of software if it doesn't already exist. So that's pretty cool. So let's go ahead and do that one. I say next. And now what computers do I want to deploy to? And notice it already has client 7 in it because I right-clicked and did deploy software from client 7. And in the lower right, it says, yeah, you can only add one resource to that collection. That was based on my security settings. By default, it's unlimited. If I did want to see more, I could even browse for a config-man query like all systems. So all systems include servers, but I don't have access to servers, so I only see my workstations. Same thing I could do, maybe a deployment scope, as we call it. Here's my users. Now I do want to deploy to a workstation, so I'll go ahead and do workstations and add client 7 back in. And then I have my deployment settings. So I have the deployment settings, is it required or available? What's my scheduling? What's my user experience going to be? Notice nothing's selected here. How I work with distribution points, and nothing's selected here. But one of the cool things, I'm going to load a deployment template. So let me load the only one I have access to is this user, workstation packages. And notice that it went ahead and selected the allow clients to share content with other clients on the same subnet. It went ahead and selected the allow users to run their program independently of assignments. It set this to be available and to pre-deploy software to user's primary device. So the template went ahead and preloaded some of these settings for me, so I don't have to think about them. I just know, load the template and bingo, everything that I need to have set is set. If I want to go ahead and change something or modify a value, I can go ahead and do so. All right, so that's the advanced method that you guys would use because you know what's going on. But your service desk people may not have that knowledge level. So what you'd probably do there is have them restricted to only using the quick software deployment. And if you only give them quick software deployment, they're not going to have the submenu. It would just go to quick or standard, whatever is appropriate for you. So let me show you what that looks like. So same scenario, I'm going to go ahead and pick Zoom it. I'm still limited to one piece of software. But notice now it doesn't even ask me for a collection. I don't have to be bothered by what collection do I pick. It by default does the automatically create collection on demand for me. And so it goes ahead and picks my one resource I was in, adds that in. So I select next. And now on the deployment settings, notice it doesn't have all those other tabs. All it has is the scheduling tab. So we took out all the complexity of what all those other settings are. Now we make you load a deployment template here. So if I try and finish this, it tells me that I have to select the deployment template to complete the deployment. So I'll go ahead and load that deployment template. And now it's set values for the deployment settings, the user experience, the distribution points tabs that we saw earlier. It's set those in the background. I just don't expose them to the help desk person so they're not confused by what that settings are. All they would want to do is control when that software gets there. Now we have this initiate client policy download. That's the fast client notification channel that Configuration Manager has. We just allow you to select it directly when you're in your deployment process. So I just go ahead and click finish. And that's gone ahead. It's now creating that collection in Configuration Manager. It's creating the collection in Config Manager, and it's going ahead and deploying that, creating a deployment for me. So that's pretty cool. And I can do the same thing on users. I can deploy software. I can manage user device affinity. So I can go ahead and click on this user 1 and see that he didn't have any computers assigned to him. So maybe he should have client 10. So I can go ahead and set that user device affinity relationship there if I want to. On software mode, so notice that I only see the Microsoft software. I don't see the Cireson software based on the view I have here. And you got multiple different views of software. So non-software, Cireson, and there's Zoom it have available to me. And then reports. Again, I only have access to those reports that I should have access to based on my security settings. So these are just Configuration Manager reports out of the box or custom ones you built. And they're available for me just based on my security settings and who has access to what reports I want. So very, very cool, easy to use. So we think it's a lot easier interface to navigate with its web-based scenario, and then giving the security rights to what features I need to have access to, what objects I need to have access to, and the ability, again, deploying software to set those controls on what collections they have access to, the built-in ones or not, and whether or not they see any collections at all. So pretty cool. We'd like to think that anyway. So with that, let's go ahead, and we're about at the top of the hour, so let's go ahead, and I see we have a few questions in the questions panel, so let's go ahead and get to those in just a second here. So let's close this out. And you'll see more of the CMP in the next couple of weeks presentations as we do Windows 10 deployment and then software deployment. So I'll show you how to create software using the CMP as well and how easy it is to do with the templates. Okay, so as you guys already know, I'm sure the top bullet, it should be a no-brainer for you. System Center Configuration Manager is great. I used to say fantastic. That's the only reason I'm still doing it after 20 plus years. You know, the product group last week at Ignite, they did those blogs and videos about Configuration Manager's 25th anniversary. And not really since it's been out, but since they started working on it in 1992. So it's been around for a long time. It's fantastic. I love it. And that's the only reason I still work with it, because I really like it. And you should not be on any previous versions of Configuration Manager. You really want to be on current branch, and you really want to stay up to date on current branch. So 1706 is out, obviously. You should be running it. Just remember the fact that, as Jay mentioned, the product group is you creating a few builds a year. They're also only supporting builds for a year currently. I think they're going to be changing that to 18 months. I don't think they've done that yet. But so right now it's a 12-month support cycle for a build. So since we're at 1706, you shouldn't be using anything less than 1606 would be the last supported build. Now 1710, since we're in October, as Jay explained the build numbers, we're in October, so hopefully later on this month, 1710 will be out with whatever the new features are they're adding in it. So it's very easy to keep Configuration Manager current branch up to date with that update and servicing feature. So very, very simple, easy process to go through. I've demonstrated a lot of times that people are really excited about it. That was actually my favorite feature when the product group created the current branch release, is the updates and servicing feature. And then if you saw what you liked in with Configuration Manager, then our Cireson portal for Configuration Manager, if you want to try it yourself, you can just go to the URL on the screen and you can download a free community version of it. So it's kind of a restricted version. It's not time bombed at all. It will pull in all your Configuration Manager data, your computers, your users, your software, your task sequences, but you can't create anything that would be written back to Configuration Manager. So you can't create software, you can't deploy software, and so on. But it's there to see what you can do with it. You can see your inventory summary of your computers. You can create your views, you can create your deployment scopes, you can set up your security. Then if you want, from that same link, you can go ahead and request a trial, and that will give you a license that runs for 30 days. You can plug that into your community version. That'll turn it into a fully functioning version, just time bomb for 30 days. So it's very, very easy to try things out. We also do have an Azure environment that you can get to from that same link. The Azure environment, I think, has 3 different personas that you can just log in and try out as an admin or a server person or a desktop support person or service desk person and so on, and just to play around with our Azure environment. So, all right, with that, it's question and answer time, and I see there are a few questions in the queue already. If anybody has any additional questions, please go ahead and type them up and get them sent in. That's good. And I see they've already been answering those. So let me just so they get in the recording, let me go ahead and verbally go through those questions that Jay's gone ahead and answered. So in regards to PowerShell, when it runs against a collection, will it run against offline computers when they come back online? And the response was the script is given a 1-hour time period in which to run. If it does not run after, for example, the PC is turned off after the time period, you must run it again. And actually what it uses there is that fast client notification channel. So it does go ahead and push it out through that same policy channel that I just showed you with our initiate client policy download. So we'll run against that. What context does the PowerShell scripts run as? System and user context. I would actually question that because I thought it runs under the context of the Configuration Manager client agent, which is running at a local system. So let us verify that for you.
Yeah, and actually the testing showed is under user context, and there's actually a user voice out there to improve that. So that was a response directly from the product team that was running under user context. But yeah, we'll confirm that and send the answer back to you.
That's good to know, because every time I'd played with it, I've been told it ran under system context. But good, but sounds like it's user context, then and user voice in there to improve that. So good. And then for the device guard policy, do you need to have the endpoint protection client installed for it to work? And no, you don't need to have Microsoft System Center endpoint protection for it. However, device guard is for the enterprise SKU. And then for me, the auto-generated collections, how are they named? Computer, username, software name, etc. I can show you that. It is based off the collection is based off of the software name, and then the action for it. So if I go to, here's my device collections, and if I click on that, you don't see the collection in there for sysinternal zoom it, because I told the CMP to put any collections or software collections created by it in a custom folder, so CMP. So here you see sysinternal zoom, and that's the manufacturer and the software name. And in this case, the program name was install. If it was an application you were deploying, it'd be again manufacturer, software name, and then the intent, whether it's install or uninstall. So that's how it's naming the collections off that. And then as you see, if we do a show members, it has client 7 in there as the one client that was added to that collection. You get to control whether it's a direct membership rule addition or whether you want to use a WQL list of members for that. And then if I go back to that collection just real quick and show you, if I go down to deployments, there's the deployment down at the bottom that you would see that we created for it. So it was a program, so it was a packaging program, and then available was what the default was with that workstation profile template that I loaded. So Austin is asking, does it create a different collection name when you choose available? No, it's not going to change the collection name. It's based on whether it's required versus available, because this was an available deployment. It's based on the so your software. So in this case, if I go to application management and go to my packages, and then here's Zoom it, and if you look at programs, the name of the program was install. So it's the manufacturer. So manufacturer sysinternals. Oops, I zoomed out. Sorry, hit the wrong button. So I saw Jay hit, or no, Phil hit a wrong button as well. So I'm glad I was going to interrupt saying I'm glad I'm not the only one that does that and zoom it sometimes. I hit the wrong button. So the manufacturer, and then the name of the package, and then it's the name of the program. In this case, install. Or if it was an application, it would be, again, your manufacturer, like Microsoft ConfigMan 2012 Toolkit R2, and then when you deploy an application, it is going to be for install or uninstall. Okay, so now Austin is qualifying available versus required. Let's assume it is deployed both ways to different PCs. It would be different. It would be different deployments. So it'd be the same collection but different deployments is what it would do there. So it creates a different deployment for that piece of software. And if you do user deployments, if you're targeting to users, it actually will put user in, I think, parentheses or in the collection name as well. So you know it's user versus device collections that you're deploying to. But all right, that's what we have for questions right now. Anybody else with any final questions that you want to have us cover for you, either on Config Manager or the CMP? And it didn't have to be on the stuff you heard today. Just anything else on Configuration Manager. You got some guys out here that hopefully can answer your questions, and if not, we can always follow up.
Yeah, Wally, one thing I want to jump in real quick. Yeah. We mentioned several times user voice, and for anybody out there who's not familiar with user voice, if you go to configurationmanager.uservoice.com, that is a primary method that the product team uses to get feedback from the community on everything from feature requests to problems that may have come up. So it's a really useful way to give your feedback directly to the product team, or yes, through the feedback option as well.
Yep. They added this to the console in 1702, I think it was, or maybe it's 1706. I don't remember which one. One of the last couple of builds, they added the feedback node from the console. So right from the console, you can right-click on your node and good feedback, and that launches off the user voice that Phil's talking about. But yes, fantastic way of getting to the product group to let them know desires as well as things that aren't working the way you think they should. Yes, great.
Yeah,
great
and then
point.
actually, and actually, this is not just a typical feedback where the feedback gets ignored; it just gets logged. I mean, Wally and Phil and myself, and there's a few others I recognize on this call, could also testify that the voice is actually heard and responses are usually given by the Microsoft product team.
Yeah, back in the old days when I was in the product group, you had Connect was your feedback mechanism. And when I was in the product group, people always say, oh yeah, Connect's just a black hole, being a trash can, a file, something gets thrown away. And that wasn't the case. It actually did get looked at. Every single item got looked at. However, the product group just wasn't very good at responding back to your Connect items so you would know what the response was. They would just close them out or do something with them, and that give you that response. Where user voice is something they do and actively look at. They actually look at the rankings of items on user voice, and that's how they look at determining priorities for upcoming releases and features to add or things to improve or change is based off of the user voice feedback. And then they're much more proactive at providing feedback back to the user voice item. So things have gotten better over the years, but yes, user voice is a fantastic way for you to let the product group know what your feelings are about different features that are there, that are working, not working, or things that are not there that you want to see. Again, that's how they help prioritize what they're working on for the future. So all right, guys, I'm seeing nothing else in the queue here. So, and we're 10 minutes past our allotted time, and a bunch of people have already had to drop off. So we will go ahead and close it out. So again, those of you that are hung around for this time, thank you very much. Appreciate your time on the call and taking a little time out of your day. Hopefully you found it beneficial from both sides. And hopefully you'll have time to go ahead and attend the next couple of sessions. Next week's is on Windows 10 deployment and management, and then the following week is on software distribution best practices. I believe it's Thursday next week, then it moves to Wednesday in 2 weeks time frame, just because we have a user group in Chicago on that Thursday. So hopefully you come back and attend. If you're not able to, again, this has been recorded and we'll get it up on the Vimeo site. So again, vimeo.com/Team Cireson, all one word, and you'll be able to find this link as well as other videos up there. And you can also share that with other people, your colleagues that weren't able to make the call. So thanks, Jay. Thanks, Phil, for a great presentation on there and answering the questions. Fantastic. And look forward to seeing you guys again next week on our next call. So you guys all have a great and fantastic rest of your day. Thanks all.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.